Hey guys, this is Mrs. Patel. I know I almost got through with the cells presentation in under 15 minutes, but there was just too much to cover. So we're going to try to wrap it up with this second video, which is all about cell transport. And this is what I'm talking about is transport across a membrane. How do we get things in and out of a cell? We're going to start with passive transport. Passive transport, basically, it doesn't require energy. It moves because of a concentration gradient where we have different amounts or different pressures or different charges across a membrane. And so the molecules move from high concentration to low concentration, and it doesn't require energy. There are three types of passive transport. We have diffusion, osmosis, and facilitated diffusion. Let's look at what each one of these is. Okay, so what we have here, I want you to look at this type of transport, and I want you to ask yourself essentially what's happening. So what type of cellular transport is this? Let me show you one more time. We have molecules moving from high concentration to low concentration. They're moving across the membrane until we're at equilibrium. There's an equal amount on either side. What type of cellular transport is this? High concentration or low concentration, right through the membrane, not using any special transport proteins or pumps or anything like that. This is called simple diffusion. Okay, simple diffusion. Is there a concentration gradient? The answer is yes initially, and it goes from high concentration to low concentration. Okay, high concentration to low until it reaches equilibrium. This is what simple diffusion looks like. High concentration on one side. This whole left side of the membrane has way more than the inside. So let's say this is oxygen. We have to get oxygen across our membrane into our cells. We breathe it in, it travels through our blood. It's on the outside of our muscle cells. It's got to get across. It does this through simple diffusion, going through it without using energy. Is there a protein carrier? Yes or no? Correct answer is no. No protein carrier. It just slips right through. And it is ATP needed. Do we need to spend energy? Correct answer is no. Simple diffusion doesn't require energy at all, just the concentration gradient. Look at this type of transport and ask yourself, how is it different? So we have molecules of glucose traveling across the membrane, moving through transport proteins, through a protein channel. We have to ask ourselves some questions. First, what type of cellular transport do you think this is? Is it diffusion, osmosis, or facilitated diffusion? Take a look. High concentration or low concentration until we reach equilibrium. This is known as facilitated diffusion. It's facilitated because facilitation means helping. So like I facilitate your education, the protein channels help facilitate diffusion. They help with diffusion. Why do they need a helper? What is different about a glucose molecule compared to an oxygen molecule? Is there a concentration gradient, or was there at first? Yes or no? And did it go high to low or low to high or neither? Correct answer is yes, there was a concentration gradient, and it went from high to low until it reached equilibrium. So, is there a protein carrier? Yes or no? And is energy needed? Answers: yes, there is a protein carrier. This is a channel protein. It's basically a hole just for glucose. Is ATP needed? No, just a protein. Why do we need a protein? It's because glucose is too big to fit in between the phospholipids like oxygen. Oxygen was just able to slip right through because it was small and didn't have a charge, so it could just zip right through. Glucose is too big, so it needs help. Let's look at this type of transport. We have outside of the cell a whole lot of water, inside the cell a whole lot of salt. You'll see this is a concentration gradient where there's a lot of salt out inside, very little outside. There's a concentration gradient of salt from high to low. And then we have a concentration of water from high to low, from outside to inside. Let's look to see what happens. You have to ask yourself, is salt going to go this way? Or is water going to go this way? And the question is why? Why does it happen this way, and why does it move at all? There is a concentration gradient. The cell does not want there to be a concentration gradient. It wants to be equal. So what's going to move where to be equal? Let's check it out. Okay, so what you should have noticed is some water moved into the cell. It actually moved through a special channel protein called an aquaporin. What you may have also noticed is that this membrane moved. When water went in, the cell inside got bigger, so the membrane expanded. Let's watch again. Same thing happens again. Water is going in. Salt hasn't moved yet. Start asking yourself why you think that is. Water's moving in from a high concentration to a low concentration, and as water moves in, the cell expands. This happens again and again until we reach equilibrium. What that means is you can see salt has not left, but when the water comes in, it dilutes the salt. So eventually we will reach equilibrium. What type of transport is the movement of water? Correct answer is movement of water from a high concentration to a low concentration is known as H2O osmosis. So it's osmosis, the movement of water. Now you'll notice that the cell gets bigger again as water moves into in through the membrane. This is osmosis. Is there a concentration gradient? Yes or no? If there is a concentration gradient, is it high to low, low to high, or neither? There is a protein carrier named aquaporin. And is energy needed? Yes or no? Correct answer is no. No energy needed. It's just another type of facilitated diffusion. Okay, now you're going to have to use your imaginations a little bit for this one. This is our first example of active transport. Active transport. The other was passive. Passive means no energy. Active transport means it needs energy to move across the cell membrane. This could be for a couple of reasons. One, they might be too big. Sorry about that. They might be too big. So they need help from a big protein that requires energy to turn it on. Another reason is we might need to pump it against the concentration gradient. There is a concentration gradient and there's a lot more outside the cell than inside. This is calcium. We actually pump calcium out of a neuron to get our nerves to fire. Okay, so we need to pump it against the concentration gradient. If you're going against the concentration gradient, it's going to cost energy. Let's watch and see what happens. So calcium enters into the protein pump. Nothing happens until ATP, which is energy, comes and turns the pump on. Now in reality, what's going to happen is that this pump kind of twists and it opens up and lets it through. I'm not that fancy in technology. Sorry about that. So use your imagination and it's going to do a little funny thing in a second, but so you can see that again, the calcium ion, I simplified it over here. The calcium ion enters in the protein pump. ATP comes and turns it on. That phosphate stays on the pump, and we now have ADP. This is sort of a deactivated ATP. The energy has been sent, but the pump has been turned on. So we're going to use our imaginations and see as the protein pump now pumps it across the membrane against the concentration gradient. What type of cellular transport is this? You see, anytime you have energy being spent, you know it must be active transport, and this is active pumping. Is there a concentration gradient? Yes, there is a concentration gradient. Is it pumping low to high, high to low, or neither? It's pumping from low concentration to high concentration. It's pumping uphill, so it takes energy. Is there a protein carrier? Yes, it is a protein pump. Is ATP needed? Yes, ATP is needed. Okay. Almost done. So active transport, remember, requires energy, and it moves it against the gradient, against the concentration gradient. So example is maybe sodium or potassium or calcium pumps, active pumping. We have other types of active transport as well, known as endo and exocytosis. Endocytosis means to move large material into the cell. Endo means in. So we have things like particles, organisms, large molecules, big things that just can't, even a protein is too big, okay? So endocytosis, you can see here, we basically use the cell membrane and we wrap whatever the cell is trying to bring in, it gets wrapped around the cell membrane and we make a little vesicle to bring it in. We actually use some of the cell's membrane to make this little pocket, like a pita pocket. Okay, this is how we bring large organisms and even large molecules into the cell. Okay, there are two types of endocytosis. There's phagocytosis, that means to eat, and pinocytosis, which means to drink. That's the cell bringing in molecules and water. The opposite is exocytosis. Basically, it's the exit of these large materials. So the same way we brought them in, we bring them out. We have a vesicle. The vesicle fuses with the cell membrane. Cell membrane opens up and kicks whatever it is out. Okay? This is how we get rid of things we don't want in the cell, or wastes, even things that we want to send somewhere else in the body. So, movement across a membrane. A few molecules can move easily. This is passive transport, no energy. This is always high concentration or low concentration. Water moves through osmosis. Really small things like carbon dioxide and oxygen, they use diffusion. And larger things need protein channels but no energy. This is facilitated diffusion, like glucose. Glucose is too big, so it needs a protein channel. This is facilitated, it's helped diffusion. Same thing, high to low, no energy. Now we have active transport. This is using carrier proteins to pump, okay? This is always low concentration to high concentration, or in some cases, they're just too big. And we also have endocytosis and exocytosis. I really hope this was helpful. You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up.